Добрый день, уважаемые.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm ready to welcome you to our session dedicated to public services in e-business. And let me introduce to you the participants of our today's session, which include Alexey Kozyrev, Deputy Ministry on Mass Media and Communications, Gunsa Kim, the head of Information Technologies Department in the city of Seoul, and also Secretary of the World E-Governments Organization of Cities and Local Governments. Also, Mikhail Maximov, First Deputy Chief of Staff of the Mayor and Moscow Government. Ruslan Gatarov, Deputy Government of the Chelyabinsk region. Georgy Belozerov, Chairman of Russian Management Company of the Russian's President's Management Training Program alumni. Sergei Gavrinkov, Chief of Information Officer, Chief Scientific Officer in Transaero Airlines, and Marcus Appenzeller, the founder of MLA++, architect and urbanist from the Netherlands. So today we will discuss a very exciting topic, and it combines three particular features. First, we will talk about services, so urban services, and so this subject is close to everybody. But then we will talk about electronic services, talk about new technologies, and we will also talk about the opportunity to support those e-services, including like the culture of using them and the administrative reform required for these services to take place. So we are in the focus of a very complicated and relevant topic, and today I would like that together with our speakers we would create a basis for discussion for us to understand what are the prospects for e-services and how they can get the population of the city involved, and how Moscow and other cities are successful in this regard, and what should be done. So now I would like to give the floor to our first speaker, Alexey Kozyrev, the Deputy Minister of Mass Media and Communications. Take the floor, please. So, dear colleagues, could you please put my presentation on the screen? So, what do I point? Sadly, I've got a slight technical problem. Next slide, please. So, I would like to begin with saying that our aim is to provide the state of things when 70% of citizens would use electronic services. Sorry for the technical problem. The previous slide, please. One slide back, please. Yeah, sorry. We need to find the right slide. One slide back, please. So, as for today, we went through a certain way on developing e-services. We have federal, regional, and municipal services, and the system of providing public services proved to be quite complicated. We have 600 of federal services overall and 400 regional services, and services may be different. And we have the system when on the one hand we want services to be easily available, but on the other hand the management system provides for some difficulties, and we have very different levels of users, advanced users and average population, and a huge audience which are not covered by the e-services. So for today, our main aim is to make technologies user-friendly and simple. People do not understand the difference between federal, regional, and local services. So this system, when you have different levels, regional, local, and federal, it doesn't support the statement that services should be widely available. So our aim is to collect all services people require in one point. So for today, big cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, and cities with populations above 1 million made a good progress in developing e-services. But as for today, provision of federal services is not possible in these forms. And in federal e-portals, you don't have all services needed for regional and local level. And on the other hand, the audience is used to commercial services, to other standards of service. We have a lot of legal, complicated services, a lot of control elements which are governed by legal framework. So we need to make a change to the situation. So services are provided based on how the public administration is organized, not as they are required for people. We need to move to the situation when e-services would be implemented at different levels, at regional or municipal levels. We would like to manage a unique library of services, and the quality should meet expectations from the user. And we need to source third parties to develop interfaces of regional and municipal systems. So we don't have that opportunity for today, and we need to upgrade public information systems. And to this end, we begin the upgrade, as we call it, open public services platform. And the example is checking of legal suits and the tax debts. The franchisee of the federal public agencies, which could be implemented through e-services, through widgets. A widget is an information site which could be embedded in municipal or regional public services portals. The next slide, please. So an example of a widget is the way to check your debt before the tax office. You see the square box, so the example could be provided by the Ministry of Communication, and together with the state tax office, they implemented a widget which could be embedded in municipal or regional portals. It could be embedded to where people would be easy to use it, and the technology is taken from the federal information system and is implemented in the interface of the regional or municipal systems. Another example, this is the way Tatarstan web portal looks like. So we saw a city portal before. This is a regional portal. So those widgets could be embedded. They could be about information, or they could have transaction functions, and they could be developed by federal agencies, by regionals or municipals, and they should be stored in one depository for all willing people to use them, having a link to the technological forum. So on the side of process, you see regional and federal portals partner sites like Yandex, for instance, and we see that regional and municipal services could be moved to different front ends, to regional services, to partner websites, and these all supports the e-government infrastructure, which drives the engine of the system. And of course, to put regions of different sites, we need to have requirements to uniform authorizations to all-round navigation, regardless of what site the individual is served at. There should be an agreement on the quality level of services, providing the technical support, and also personal data safety should be provided for. That would allow us to meet a totally new level in providing services to the individuals. Implementing that program would have a great synergistic effect between municipal, regional and federal websites, as the users would be able to get the whole range of services, no matter of what level of services they are after. Thank you so much. Thank you. I've got two questions to you, with your permission. The first question, as you represent a federal public agency, how would you assess internet penetration in different regions, in different cities of the country, and how it influences the possibility to use that type of services? Regarding e-services availability, the average penetration of wideband internet is about 50%, and about 30% are users of the e-services as of survey which was carried out in Q1 of the current year. And we see the correlation between the internet penetration and the level of usage of the electronic services. So we need to provide broadband access to all regions. You know, the program on reforming universal communication services, and the Rostelecom needs to build fiber optic lines to all 200,000 plus settlements, cities. So, and this is one of the biggest construction project in the world, and we need the e-government needs e-citizens. The broadband internet access should be available in all populations, and services should be clear and require no special training. Thank you so much. Another question about how stringent are technological regulations for all the portal. So we see a change in technology, and we see many developers that keep producing efficient applications. So how possible it would be to use your portal to develop the technical community? The point is, we don't suggest you use our portal. We suggest you use any portal which supports technical and organizational requirements. And technical requirements would be conditioned by the platform with widgets. We will have widgets in just one format, and we do that to provide for technical standards that would allow us to put them on any website. Without such standards, we will get a random set of widgets which would not work everywhere. But from the point of view of organizational standards. For the system to be efficient, we need special regulations and bylaws, and they would be based on requirements to operators of the information systems, which will use elements of the electronic system on their website. We have 1 minute for a potential question from the audience. After all our speakers deliver their presentation, we will have a discussion. Okay, so thank you so much. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Gunso Kim, the head of Department on Information Technology in the Government of Seoul and General Secretary of the World Governments Organization of Cities and Local Governments. Take the floor, please.
Yeah, I usually, it's okay. I think it's too loud, and I usually give the presentation about what we have done. But today, I'd like to give the next year's plan of IoT. And when I talk about the e-government, if I have to choose the one thing between the data and the service, I would pick the data as the most important than the services. Of course, services is important, but so okay, the Bukchon is kind of the very traditional areas between two palaces, and it's very popular for the tourists, and just like that. So we'd like to call it the IoT, the Internet of Things at the Bukchon areas. And we'd like to announce the very specialized IoT zone. And so with this slide, I'd like to very concentrate on the data. The first step, the data generation, and the second is with so many data, how can we deliver that data with the very low budgets, and how can we store the immense data, and how can we share that data with the private sector and the other agencies. And the fourth is, of course, how can we find some insight from the data? We now call it the big data analysis. And the final is, of course, with the insights, we'd like to build some services for the citizens and the other agencies. Okay, so we'd like to put over 10,000 sensors in that areas to encourage every corner of the city to generate data. So many data. Of course, there's some beacons and of course NFCs, some sensors that can detect it, of course temperatures, noises, and sometimes the light or something. Also, so many. So we have 14 types sensors. I think the next stage we have to deliver so many data. So in Seoul, we already have the USOLED and ESOLED, which connect all our 25 subsidiaries. So I mean, it's city-owned the network, so we don't have to pay the money to the commercial carriers. So I'd like to test what kind of the wireless network is needed for the transfer of so many data. So in IoT generations, the data could be generated seamless. So of course, still now I don't have not much that ideas. So sometimes we have to combine the very near field wireless network, and how could we combine with the existing fiber optic cables? So I want to invite your city or your company to join this project and collaborate and study what is the best network configuration for the IoT areas of the very big mega city like the Moscow. And the third thing would be of course, the cloud computing, which can store the enormous data, and it could be used by the private sectors and, of course, the many citizens. So we are building the buildings till 16th April, and we also start studying what's the best configuration of the cloud computing for the mega cities. Fourth is actually I'm very specialized in the big data analysis. We already have some good example how to use the data from the citizens to solve some citizens' problems. The first thing is how can we set up the late night bus route by using the data from the citizens, and the next thing is which is the best solution for the taxi. So we'd like to inform the citizens to which position is best for the hiring tax within given the context of when it's snowing or it's the weekend. I think so it's very different from the context to other context. So this is the big data analysis. And the final, with the insight of the analysis, we'd like to give some applications like the e-voting or the service portal to the peoples. But this is the example of the IoT services for the safety and welfare. So yeah, we'd like to introduce the snow ice removal service. Of course, the smart CCTV that can detect the illegal things. And this is the example of the smart cross which can detect so in Bukchon areas nowadays, so many tourists coming together. So they're coming to the big tourist buses. So the young children are open to the dangers of that kind of things. So we'd like to keep safe our children from that kind of the dangers by using the IoT technology. Yes, of course, we'd like to help some tourists with the badge service. I think you may know the kind of things, and you don't have to download another applications. And finally, this is mobile tag and badge. When you have the chance to visit the Bukchon areas after next years, you can enjoy that kind of the services. And another things, I believe you already know the kind of the waste basket and street light or the water inspection and things. So this is the last seat of the presentation. I'd like to connect all the city's components, including citizens and the other things like the cars, roads, and bridges. And I'd like to invite the other weather things, rain and wind and cloud. So you can see the 5 value chains from the data generation, data transfer, and stores, and analysis, and the utilization. This is our business, connected, digital. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions.
Well, you talked a lot about Internet of Things, and so of course it's clear that this is a fantastic source of data. Do you think that, electronic services that cities provide to their citizens could also play the same role as a fantastic data mine that can be further used in analysis and strategy development and what do you think is the most important thing about this question?
Yes. So I think the city government has some kind of a limit of the budget and manpower. So we'd like to invite so many Seoul citizens to develop their own solutions for solving citizen problems. So I'd like to focus on not to the service, but to the data. So we provide the data to the citizens, and we encourage the people and invited the people, and we would like to cooperate with the citizens to solve the problem with the government and the citizens. So that's why I emphasize every time the data is a little bit more important than the service itself. So, yes, I think the Moscow is very similar to that of the Seoul. The private sector is always have the great capability of building or giving the more good services than that of government side. So.
Thank you very much. And my second question is about Seoul. All right. So we know that Seoul is pretty much fragmented. So well, the local authorities have a lot of responsibilities, and they're pretty much autonomous, right? So do you see this as a problem or not?
Yes. Actually, we have 25 subsidiaries. It's not small, and of course they are very autonomous. But with the IT things, I have to say we have to cooperate, of course, with the 25 subsidiaries. With the Seoul City Hall, I think we have not the little budget, but the subsidiaries, I don't think they have enough money to do some project about kind of the big data. Of course, the IoT things, they have to put a lot of money to that kind of project. So next year, we raised another budget for the collaborating with the subsidiary to solve some kind of problem. So I love to recommend to city of the Moscow. So, sometimes the city hall and the subsidiaries competing for introducing some technologies. Why? Because it's very autonomous. The leadership has the different political parties, but that's why we need the IT leadership. So, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to make a vote. You have devices, and using these devices you can vote. First of all, please turn them on. So please push on the button sign in, and a light will flash. And on the screen we will have 2 questions, and I want you to face these 2 questions because they are very important for our overall evaluation. So the first question, please put the question on the screen, if you may. Have you received governmental services in digital format, in electronic form? So you have an option yes, and you have another option no. Please vote. I think that everyone has made his or her choice. So the result is overwhelming, as you see. The overall majority enjoys the digital services. And the second question, do you use the internet for non-information services? For example, shopping and for other activities via internet. So we see the higher rate here, but the ratio in general is the same. And in this case, it gives us a hint that the penetration rate of internet in our society is the main driver for the shift of digital services to the digital form. These questions are very important, and I would like to ask another question. Okay, the microphone is on. So I would like you to vote on the following. Do you need an opportunity to have services from different levels, from regional, municipal, on the same portal? Okay, please give us a second. We need to introduce this question. We need to make some technical things, and it will be on the screen later on. And we will also translate this question so that our English audience would have a possibility to vote. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mikhail Maximov, First Deputy Chief of Staff to the Mayor of Moscow. So the floor is yours. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And when we made these questions, we thought that the answer will be that 40% are using services and 90% are buying tickets and so on and so forth via internet. And we want to ask the question, why do you only buy stuff on the internet without using our services? But it is not like that. A lot of services are available in digital form in the city of Moscow, and I will talk exactly about that. Now I would like to explain why we are talking about federal services on the municipal portals, and then we had a presentation on IoT in Seoul. Right now we are pondering on how we shall develop further governmental digital services. And I would like to highlight the following. Right now we are at the stage how I pay for something, how do I enroll my kid into a club, into economy, but technologies are developing way faster. But in the years to come, the following questions will come up: not only how to get a taxi, but how to deliver food to your apartment, and so on and so forth. And we wanted to compare our visions. We wanted to synchronize our watches. We wanted to understand what are digital services for citizens of Moscow. It is not only getting your passport. It is not only getting an appointment with your physician. It is a more broader thing. I will describe what we are doing currently in Moscow. So in Moscow we have around 300 services. And out of these 300 services, 146 services are very relevant, and the remaining services are not in so high demand. Several years ago, we made a goal. We wanted to make the most of these services and to provide them in digital form. And here you see some numbers on the screen, millions of requests from people, but one indicator is particularly striking. We have more than 3.6 million of personal accounts. It means that every family in Moscow has an account, and infrastructure is ready for further development. So we see the IP address of a person. We know that one person usually uses one or two devices. It means that each Muscovite arrives at his working place, turns on his or her computer, looks at the Facebook, looks at the grades of his or her kids, and then they do the same at home. So our population is ready to enjoy such services, to use them, and we have the required infrastructure. What do we mean by digitalizing services? Digitalizing services means avoiding face-to-face communication. And sometimes when people say digitalize, they mean only providing digital information. But for us, digitalizing is that avoiding face-to-face contact. For instance, you have given birth to a second child, you want to receive child benefits, and you can receive a remittance to your debit card without seeing the authorities. And this is very important. And we need to have a truly digital service, a fully digital service. On this slide, we have 16 services which are only online. So in Moscow, there are 16 services which are available only online. For instance, enrolling to a school, or enrolling to a kindergarten, or for instance, to get a pass to arrive by car to the city center. You can do this only digitally. What implementation cases we have to present to you? And I've described opportunities related to our kids. And please put the next slide on the screen, and then I will go back to the previous slide about the registration. Okay, this one. So how can you provide a digital service? So if they say to you, we will enroll your kid into the kindergarten, and if they say that you need to go to see someone face-to-face in an authority, no one will go there. They will go directly to the kindergarten. So we need to provide services without making our citizens to go here or there. And we have 3 forms. We have a simple registration form. You need to specify only your email and your personal insurance number, and that will suffice for us to decide whether the service will be provided to you or not. For instance, when we're talking about child benefits, the Social Defense Department will said to us that we will not remit money if we did not see a person with a passport. But why not? We can find a solution. So if you are identified as a Muscovite, we can find you in a database, which was mentioned already by my colleague, and we can make a decision that this guy, Mr. Ivanov, is entitled to get child benefits, and this person will not be able to receive the money at the bank without showing his or her passport. And there is no room for abuse here. You can provide the services without face-to-face communications, even in some difficult cases. Urban development, next. All urban development related services are available in a digital form in Moscow. So when we were making this shift, when we were banning paperwork, the private companies were not ready. They said to us, please give us some time, and because they were accustomed to carry these huge binders with papers, with signatures. However, we decided to shift to this e-signature system. Training courses. There is a very interesting service. We have understood that for our citizens, it's not only important to subscribe digitally, but today you can subscribe to a training camp, to a training academy only digitally. And some people were not aware that they had, for instance, 5 or 6 football academies nearby. But when it became digital, we provided a new service. We are offering a selection of training camps and academies which are shown on the map, and people became aware that they have a lot of such services around in their neighborhood. And let's go to the next topic. We've heard about federal services, taxi services. We have the one system, single personal account. You cannot remember all the time hundreds of logins, hundreds of passwords. So you need to memorize only one password. You will have a link to the State Services portal on your desktop. There you can check your kids' grades. There you can see whether you have car parking fines. And for all this, you can use the same password and login. And to do so, we have a personal account.
When you are told to check in for the doctor, you need to enter your policy number. You just check in at the reception. But if at least once you would key in the number, then it would be very easy to make the appointment. You just help your parents to set the Skype account once, and they will never use Skype if you will have your personal data there. So our proposal is that we should strive to the situation then an individual should have one entry point with all information characterizing his profile, and he will not have to look for his ID, for his passport, but he will select my son Sasha has to enroll for football, and my mother has to see the doctor. So the services should be very easy and simple, and I think that in our subsequent discussion we can discuss on how this could be done, because just making services electronic is a first step on making life in the city comfortable using all the internet-based technologies which are developing. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Your question, please. Yeah, please, could you bring in the microphone? Or I can share mine with you. Yeah, just 1 second. Thanks for an interesting presentation. As we were taught by cybernetics, every system has a feedback as a stability factor. And this should be feedback not only involving active users, but also potential users, because we still have people which like the traditional way of services, although the electronic services cover all levels. And I would like to ask if there were any surveys on how people react to e-services, what advantages and what downsides are in relation to the functionality of the interface. So, first of all, we would assess the quality of services through the daily monitoring. So it will guide us in terms of what we could do. If we see that we monitor the situation. If we see there are comments on the housing sector, our audience is 3.6 million accounts, but only 1.2 million of them are active. The question is why people used the system just once. So we need to revive those who came across us at least once, and why don't they use services? And regarding our potential audience, there are two main aspects. So the first one, not ready, and it's not convenient. Not ready means that people do not know about the opportunity, and I come across that situation among my friends. My friends just don't know, and when I would explain, they would tell, wow, it's a great solution. Second part, people just cannot do it, and only 35% of users are men and 65 are women, because they care more about how to check kids' grades at school. And the next part of the audience, they just don't believe in it, or they are afraid of it. They would tell, give me a piece of paper. So there is a lack of confidence in electronic services. And also there is inconvenience in using. So the construction people told me, we are not ready. The service is great, but I need to train my people. But there are some situations like with certification marriages. So when are they required? So it would take 5 years via the portal, and it takes straight away when you come to the civil registration office. So the two main factors are not ready or not convenient. Thank you very much for your comments. Now let's take a look. The situation is quite interesting. We understand that on the one hand, electronic services make our life much more comfortable, and the reason is not just the rapid speed of response, but also exterritorial principle. It's like the information centers. This exterritorial principle is the main characteristic of the urban community, because people live not where their permanent residence is, and they keep moving across the cities, and there is people who do not confide in it, and there are some services that you can only get in person when you come to the office of the public agency. So I would like to put a question to vote. Do you agree that to obtain government services exclusively in electronic form? I think we understood the situation, so it's near the parity, but those who agree are slightly more than 40%, and this is a great illustration to the question asked by Mikhail on how do we find the right balance. Let's memorize this proportion and use it in our discussion. And now I would like to give the word to Ruslan Gatarov, Deputy Government of Chelyabinsk region. Thank you very much. So our discussion has actually begun, and in our region, I would like to say, we had recently elections of the governor, and after they were over, we began to think about the strategy, and we had a panel, and we realized that we can only make our region attractive if you have a big agglomeration. Center of the region where people would resettle from the countryside, from smaller cities. Not everybody moves to Moscow, but we would like people to stay in the greater Chelyabinsk. And people will say if there is an IT cluster with programmers and IT parks. And today, in the main plenary session, we had an expert who told us this is a big problem, that Moscow, London, Seoul, New York, and other cities, they attract the best, and they account for a large part of the economy. And this is a problem for regional development. So we believe that, of course, we have such situation in Russia. Moscow attracts the best, attracts money. But of course, Moscow is changing recently, and Mikhail has just shown us. So this is the public services, and we could overcome the tendency. This is not the case in most regions. Alexei Kozrev said that we are taking a step forward. So I thought Alexei would rather told about millions of inquiries, and we often meet at each other in various conferences, and I thought that he would continue with his traditional presentation. But now I see a new presentation. I see this is a very interesting and very correct approach. One point is it's quite important that icons that would appear on Yandex, so that there is not so much delay with security delay that with writing a pile of papers. So this is a very correct initiative, and we need to avoid over-regulating it. So take a look. Alexei is talking about public services. Mikhail is talking about public services. Our colleague from South Korea, from the Republic of South Korea, talks about big data, about smart cities. And it was the same earlier today in the conference. So we are still fighting public services, but the whole world around us talks about big data, about smart cities. Smart city, yes. So the Ministry of Mass Media and Communication and we as community, we could open that discussion. Of course, there are a lot of buts. First of all, it's about resources. There is a lack of them. In our well-off years, we began the e-government project, and much of our funds were invested in e-government. Yeah, it is important. It is mentioned in presidential decrees, in dozens and hundreds of federal laws. But the world cannot stop. And for today, the Ministry of Mass Media and Communications, they really drive this e-government. But all the bonuses are no longer available. Yeah, there was a change, and the new team is completing the program, and I feel that we lost the drive. And to me, smart cities and big data, it's not about just their accumulation. We constantly hear about big data, but we don't have too many services. And to see it in an unbiased way, this state cannot use it. We have an instruction from the Ministry of Economic Development or from the Ministry of Mass Media and Communication, and they tell us in the regions, you need to develop a big data web portal. But what do we do next? It's not clear. For the moment, we see just one way for the development. In the regions have problem with resources, and the resources are only enough to meet the tasks stipulated in the presidential decrees. But for the further development, we need to attract private money, public-private partnerships, concessions, and there are a number of options possible. And in Chelyabinsk regions, we see a number of projects to be implemented, and this is one of the drivers we have. If we have drivers represented by the Ministry of Regional Development and the Ministry of Mass Media and Communication, and Moscow will be the first region to introduce it actively and to share it with the regions. Because Moscow has 100 or 1,000 more opportunities than an ordinary region. It would be a great help. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've got a short question to you. So you mentioned agglomeration. So you actually are talking not about the city itself, but about agglomeration. So how do you manage to create this information cluster and coordinate actions by different municipalities? At the moment, we are creating an agglomerations, 7 districts around Chelyabinsk. And why do we succeed in it? Because there is very little in place But on the other hand, if we have opportunities and funds to do it, then most municipalities are willing to do it. Those who oppose to development and expansion, well, they are major players, and we only heavily have two districts, Chelyabinsk and Kopeysk, who oppose change. Others are smaller, and it's easier to get them involved. Thank you. Now let's move to our next presentation, and I would like to invite Georgy Belozerov, so Russian managerial community of the RUS, Russian personal training program. As I don't have a presentation, I would like to share with you the message of business communities on the main public services. So there are not too many of them, and they are reflected in the famous report by World Bank. They include the improvement in enterprise registration, then getting construction permit, getting connected to the grids, and registering entrepreneurs. So in the first case, getting the registration of enterprises, the mechanism was quite good. So, and in real life, it happens quite quickly, and you don't have to provide so many documents, and this service is quite appropriate in e-format. And regarding three other areas, tasks has been set, and public authorities try to implement those services electronically, but it's not just a matter of building up interface and to allow a person to enter data on a web portal. We see that there is a big spread in the quality of service. In some regions, it takes 1.5 years to get a construction permit, but in some regions it's 2 to 3 months. So in Chelyabinsk region, there was a record. Chelyabinsk, Krasnoyarsk area, and Rostov region. As for connecting to utilities, progress was not so good, but in Krasnoyarsk, the term went down from 340 days to 60 days, and this is a small victory. Regarding registration property rights, there are some web portals dedicated to property, but as for the land register and getting extra opportunities from public agencies, they are not interrelated. So we see that interfaces are working, but internal systems of the organizations are not being implemented, at least to correspond with the opportunities of our mobile devices. And we realize that the work is being carried out, and businesses are cooperating with representatives of the government to plant targets set before the businesses and get a high-quality service. And also, we see that currently the government spends a lot for data collection, for support of the services, and we believe it's important not to have the state as the only owner of the data, because it's a big data array about us as citizens, as entrepreneurs, and there is a big area. We don't have such wide access to the data as the state. So this is about all I would like to comment about in my brief presentations, and I see some changes. And regarding data, this could be a breakthrough for development in a number of areas.
Thank you very much. I have a question. The following question to you. You have mentioned doing business, the ranking of the World Bank, and there are different rankings available, according those which are evaluating corruption level. Do you think that such e-services are helping to curb this level? Yes, of course, e-services are helping to curb the level of irresponsibility, of corruption, and we need to face this by implementing e-services in state authorities. Thank you very much. And I have a question to the audience. Do you believe that the transfer of the provision of government services in electronic form will eradicate bribery? Okay, we see here a great picture which will add to your answer. This mechanism will help to eradicate corruption. However, the corruption is preventing digital services from implementation. But we see that the trend is an optimistic one. Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. For your speech. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sergei Gavrinkov, Chief Information Officer, Transaero Airlines. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. We are in a sort of discussion format right now. And in that case, given that I'm the only representative of business in this panel, so we as an airline, we embarked on the way of providing digital services, digital tickets, and we are all using digital tickets. And I think that there are some people in the audience who don't know that we had tickets on paper to take an airplane. And as an airline, as Transaero, we were the first in the Russian Federation to introduce digital tickets, and we've managed to bring this effort to fruition. And we had a lot of steps on this way. We had some sort of transitional periods when our clients and the citizens will take some time to adjust to digital services, where they will have to adjust to the non-existence of paper-based services, and it will not happen in a very quick manner. And of course, authorities and the representatives of other industries will see many pitfalls on this way. They will see some legislative impediments, and it is not a secret that many are those authorities who are requiring to provide paper-based documents. So they are not aware of what my colleagues just said. As a matter of principle, in the framework of my speech, I have to tackle several questions. First of all, why we as a business need online services. And historically, the need for online services was triggered not by profit-making opportunities. We wanted to have tighter bonds with our clients. We wanted to give them another channel which would help them to tackle their issues. This is first thing. And the second thing is that online services are providing not only a comfortable way to communicate, they are also providing a certain degree of safety for our passengers. And this is a very rich topic, and I can dwell on that for a long time. But our main principles are safety and comfort. And in that respect, e-services and availability of e-services for our passengers were of paramount importance. How can we evaluate the efficiency of our services? Frankly speaking, in order to evaluate the efficiency in business terms, you need to understand what are the costs, what are the expenditures for the business. Every service we provide to our clients is worth something. Aviation is a business with significant monetary expenditures. So the efficiency of a service in the eyes of businesses is the following. We look at the profitability, we look first at the net price of a service. We evaluate how we manage to decrease this price. We evaluate the number of clients which were brought thanks to this service, how we managed to become closer to our clients, how we managed to broaden our set of services. And this comprehensive evaluation will give us an opportunity to assess the efficiency of a service. And online services, they give us a possibility to tackle tariffs, to reduce tariffs, and this makes aviation and airplane tickets more available to our customers. As of today, I can say that 15% of all airplane tickets are bought via our website, our web service. And more than 40% of our passengers are checking in online. And this is rather new service, but we see a high degree of trust on this market. If I am to speak the satisfaction level of our clients, and here we are lucky, because in addition to online services, we have constant communication of a lot of our clients, beginning with offices, airports, and ending by the air transportation itself. So we receive reviews all the time. Sometimes reviews are pleasant. It is great to read them. We understand that we are working for people. We have something to be proud of. Sometimes we are facing negative feedback, and negative feedbacks gives us a possibility to evaluate further directions for development. And we can evaluate our services by different inquiry forms, by analyzing the traffic of our website. But however, being digital, we are trying to maintain that face-to-face communication with our passengers. And there was a question, whether shall we make all the state services digital? So my opinion as a representative of a business, yes, we shall. However, we shall not eradicate this face-to-face live communication. We need to maintain such opportunities. We will reduce the number of offices in the network. However, we cannot kill all the offices. And there are other indicators. We are registering of, we are checking in of around 500,000 people every month. And we sell of around 4,000 tickets online every day. So we have rather good indicators as a business. So another question, where do we find our ideas? So we are taking our ideas from the thin air, because we are talking with our passengers when they are in the air on board of a plane. And we are heeding their calls. And we as workers of Transaero, we are also having lots of business trips. We are going on holidays, and that is why we are also flying all around the world. And that is why we are expanding our network all the time, because I want to fly the planes of only my company. And we get ideas from the market, from the passengers. And we look at new emerging online services as well to get ideas. All this is very interesting. And the last question, what is the role of technical support? I think that the role of the technical support is the following. The client shall not need to come to technical support. But the most important thing is the speed of response. A person needs to understand that he or she is heard, and they need to understand what is the deadline for mitigating their issue. Now, this is my opinion. Thank you very much. You've managed to answer to all of our questions. I have another two questions for voting, but we will do this at the end of this session. Now I'd like to give the floor to Marcus Appenzeller, Director and Partner at MLA Plus, the Netherlands.
So let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. So I titled my presentation Cities for iPeople. I'm an urban planner, and we're also increasingly dealing with government and government institutions, which for various reasons, and some we've heard today, are actually quite active in moving services from the physical world to the virtual world. And this also applies increasingly to things which relate to physical space of cities. But I want to put a little question mark to that as to whether that's really something we should be going for, and if we go for something like that, what can we actually achieve? We've analyzed a series of websites in Bahrain, in Rotterdam, for Moscow, for Santander, and in essence they all deal with comparable issues to various degrees. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some provide more services, others provide less services. But it all comes down to websites which basically name problems, they frame issues, they help sometimes in decision making with polls, as we do them here today. They are tools of communication, even though I think still in a quite rudimentary stage. They help organizing things, and some of them also offer sort of learning tools. So what can your government offer you in terms of city development, and what can you take from that? Now, if we analyze those a bit, what actually works well, we found is, information works well, filing applications work quite well, filing complaints is something which works reasonably well. You can make sort of propositions for improvements, and these things work well, and the sort of polls are actually also functioning quite well. So in essence, dealing with the sort of mass bureaucracy and with standardized procedures is something these websites are very good in. What they're not so good in is actually discuss things thoroughly and discuss things in a more holistic and a more complex way. And often when we come to urban design questions, that's actually, it's not a question of which you can necessarily answer with yes or no. It's a question which probably provokes a counter question based on which you enter into a discussion, and then you come to some sort of conclusion. So these non-standard things and these non-standard procedures that we see in urban development, since every place is different, are something which are problematic, and with this is also the usually quite high complexity of different things involved in this urban development processes that create a complex. This is very hard to manage, and it's also very hard to represent in an electronic format. So, I mean, there have been various attempts of kind of modeling physical space in virtual space. This is a picture from Second Life, which has, I think, don't know if it even exists still, but it's almost dead. And I think one of the reasons is people just very quickly got bored of it and found that, this sort of artificial reality is somehow less appealing than the real reality. And it also does not reflect all the things that we experience in cities, and all the things that actually make cities quite livable. So what we see is actually, and what we need to do to actually get this process somehow linked to each other, because I think that should be the ultimate goal, is to basically establish an interactive digital participation and discussion platform where we can also start discussing things in a more complex way. So not only having polls where you can say, do you want A, B, or C, or yes or no, but actually having systems where opinions can actually change the questions that are being discussed and can respond to that again. What we also then need is actually a sort of physical interface, because ultimately cities are physical. What we have here is a physical space. Despite all electronics, we all still are physical human beings and we live in physical cities. So how do we actually link this back to the physical environment, and how can we actually reflect that what is discussed in the virtual world in the physical world? And then as a third one, actually feeding what's being discussed in the physical world back into a virtual environment, which then allows us to actually start the circle again. I think there are tools which are at the moment evolving as to how can you make more interactive and more complex discussions. This is an example learning from the Pirate Party in Germany, which has established a system which they call liquid feedback, where it's not only you can basically propose ideas, they are being discussed. Those discussing it can propose changes. You can accept changes or reject them, and then it goes to the next level. So there is a more complex way of interaction. Maybe there is, or for sure, there is more in the future. When it comes to the virtual systems, we also see an enormous evolution of GIS-based systems, which are not only static data, what they used to be in the past, but also increasingly have all the dynamic data included. Transport is just one of them. But what about how can we link it back to the physical environment of our cities? I think that's the big problem, and this is where I think still there is not really a fulfilling and satisfying answer to that. So that, I think, is something that needs to be developed. Next to working with my company, I'm also teaching in St. Petersburg at an IT and technical university, and we were commissioned to develop a vision for Kronstadt, which is a part of St. Petersburg, and we thought, being at an IT university, we also wanted to actually have this link and start a discussion not in the physical space, but actually start a discussion in a virtual space, simply by kind of identifying a series of protagonists, which then stand for certain models of development, discussed this in interviews that were held, but also with the invitation to actually for other people to propose their own ideas on top of the basic models that have been put forward, and ultimately also declare their support or rejection of support for some of the ideas. We took that then, and I think that's important, to actually took that back to local meetings with population, with politicians, with everybody involved, to actually discuss that and actually also reflect a bit more on all the statements that have been made. In a way, finding a better idea as to what the right direction of development actually is for that place. Another example is something which is the city of Louisville in the US is busy with. They placed an open call to collect ideas for proposals for the urban development plan, which is currently under development. So people can actually submit their own architectural proposals or their own city improvement proposals as computer models, and there is SketchUp, which is a cool tool and very easy to use, and so people submit these ideas, or they can submit pictures, or they can submit sketches, and they hire people which actually translate that into computer models, which subsequently now actually get printed on 3D printers and put on a physical model. So you can actually, what's been thought of in a virtual world immediately becomes physical, and you can discuss it, you can walk around, you can look at it, and you can evaluate two versions in the same context with people around, which then can actually form their opinion as they're interacting with a physical representation of the city. And I think there is more of these things. Rotterdam has a city initiative which is actually completely virtual, where the city pledges a certain amount of money every year to sponsor a project, but the proposals, the assessment and the voting come from the residents via online websites. And that, for example, led to that Rotterdam now has the biggest rooftop farm in Europe. That's just one example. And every year they spend 3 million euros in developing one of these projects. Next year they're doing a steady surfing wave, which is going to be realized in the harbor. So I mean, there is tools which are in the process of starting to link a physical discussion with a virtual discussion with the physical world. Just to conclude, I think the e-services are, and let's face it, they're playing a more and more important role in our life, and they also play a more and more important role in the urban development processes we are seeing. And I think they're also a very good tool to create transparency, because all opinions, everything that's being said is trackable and is actually ideally available to everybody. I think they have a problem where you have a lot of non-standard questions and problems, especially when they're very complex. And then I think the e-service as such and the e-service alone is too limited as a tool. So you have to develop a link to the physical world to actually deal with these questions. But what that link is, I think that's a job of us, but that's also a job of people which actually develop these web portals. And that's probably also, I'm convinced it's also part of the work that we have to see emerging in the relation of the discussion of the Internet of Things. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have a question to you. Okay, you have a translation. Вопрос моего состоит в...
My question is, you mentioned virtual world, virtual city, which is being created by a number of stakeholders, like residents of the city together with the government of the city. And what balance do you have between the first and the second? How important is cooperation between residents and the government? Is there any competition between residents and government? You have web portals popular among the residents, and you have different portals offered by the authorities of the cities.
If you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said there is no competition between governments and the residents. But actually, a lot of these media make it that lead to an empowerment of local people, and they start also engaging much more actively in development processes in cities. And I think that's a big question to be discussed, probably too big for this session, is to what's the role of these two entities and how can they find a fruitful interaction? Because at the moment it's very often very confrontative, but I think this should develop more into a, two systems reinforcing each other rather than two systems competing and fighting with each other. And I think developing these physical links actually can help, because you're taking something which is non-physical back into a world where real people meet around things they can touch, they can look at in various angles, and they can in that way evaluate with all the senses they have.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We don't have too much time left. However, let's create a basis for discussion. And I see a number of subjects which were repeated during our discussion. The balance between e-services and physical services. So this balance could be explained by a number of factors. Then secondly, data. Everybody mentioned data, that the entire process of e-services is a source of fantastic information for urban designers, for urban developers. And thirdly, efforts of public agencies on coordinating different agencies and on information reform are quite essential. So before we begin our discussion, I would like to ask three questions. First of all, would you agree that the documentation about ownership documentation on an apartment should be only electronic? Please vote. Yeah, the balance is evident. The majority do not agree, and this is not reflecting confidence towards e-services, but it's rather a matter of habit, a matter of tradition, paperwork. So people do not believe that the bureaucracy will disappear. And the second question is, do you believe that in 5 years' time it would be possible to stop visits in person in favor of online government services? 5 years. Yeah, you see, struggle is intense. Yeah, a very impressive result. It's much more positive. So maybe in 5 years' time, the matter of trust will be different, and the answer to the previous question was different. Do we have a question on local governments? Could you please put it on? Are the federal services necessary for regional and local websites? Yeah, obviously the answer is yes. There is the overwhelming majority saying yes. There were two questions on the proportion of electronic and traditional form, and the question of coordinating different public agencies. So they are very well represented by these questions. We only have 5 minutes left, but maybe somebody would like to speak on those questions or ask questions to our distinguished panelists. Your question, please. I'm Natalia Volkova, and I made a survey for Moscow Urban Forum together with the Higher School of Urbanistics. And my question is that during our research, we got results on internet and social networks penetration in all regional centers of Russia. And we came across a very interesting effect. The smaller the city, the higher the penetration. So small cities use internet as an extra resource to participate in social life, in global life, and social networks act as a multiplier. The effect is even higher. So do you think how this could influence using services in small cities, and how this resource could be used for development of public services? And I would like to specify that smaller cities are cities with the populations below 250,000. I can probably answer it. In our e-services portal, we have the number of visitors from 5 to 7,000 people, and we do not use social networks. Most of them use direct links, and 2 to 3 people would move from VKontakte or Facebook. When we think on how we can attract more audience, we see that we do not get any audience from the social networks. But when we would check the audience from social networks, they are mainly aged 25 to 40, and 70% of our users are aged 25 to 40. So if people are active in social networks, they would come to our portal via a direct link. So that means that we don't have a big reserve to attract people. And those people who do not check in are not present in social networks. And I would like to tell you that for today, we have 60 to 70 million citizens who never used internet, and many of them live in settlements where you have limited opportunities on how you can engaged in entrepreneurial activities with modern communication resources. So if you remember, in 19th situation, in 19th century, the railroad would come to new cities and would inspire new life into them. Today, communications play the same role as the railroad would play in the 19th century. So building broadband internet access lines is a strategically very important task for Russia. Many thanks. Your question, please. Sorry, the question is out of the microphone. Alexei Stepanov from the Committee of State Services, and I would like to ask a question to our distinguished guest from South Korea. So during our discussion, we said that there is a problem in Moscow. There is a lack of trust in results of services you get in electronic form. And if you remember the results of our question, if people would agree to have their ownership, their apartment ownership certificate only in electronic form. So you see the audience reacted, the result was 50-50. So we have a lot of people who are not ready to have all services provided in electronic forms. So my question is whether your country had the same problem of lack of confidence towards electronic services, and how did you resolve that task? Was it just the practical result, or if you could share some other ways and decisions you used in the past?
For the first of all, I can understand why the Moscow people do not believe the electronic forms. So I can even imagine this electronic form. It should be essentially be right, no? And so actually the last session about the e-voting, I was very wondering this. So you guys are very serious about the e-services, and I think so you are very focusing on the specific the one or two questions. So are you agree with the result of the e-survey or e-voting or something like that? But in my case, we are very focusing on the trend. In my case, the m-voting in Seoul, so we put so many questions to the citizens, and we just looking around how many people's answers to a certain questions. So we can have ideas nowadays. Seoul citizens have what kind of interested in, for example, for safety or transportation or the other cultural things. So we'd like to just focus on the trend and try to read the mind of the citizens, not just focus on one or two questions. So I've already mentioned we don't want to focus on certain service. Why? Because even in Korea and Seoul, about 20 or 30% of citizens don't have the smartphone and they can't enjoy the smart services. So I think I don't want to bother the Seoul citizens to join to all the e-services. I just think with the help of the e-service, we have very good tools, very good ways to know what really Seoul citizens think about or what they really want to have. Just we want to have the insight from the data of the e-service. That's why I always emphasize data itself, not the service. Why? Because even in Korea, not all citizens can enjoy the e-service. So I want to give if I can, then I can give you some advice to the city of Moscow. You don't have to very focus on the one or two question or one or two specific service, but rather than the output or the data of that service, you should try to find the data that they help to the city government to know what your people really want. Okay.
Thank you. Спасибо большое. У меня есть вопрос к...
Thank you. And I've got a question on data. You mentioned that the city generates a huge amount of data, and everybody would agree with that. But do you feel a lack of an intelligence tool, and how the expert community reacts? Is it ready to analyze it from the Internet of Things and from public services? Is there a challenge related, or don't you think so?
To urban development, and this is my perspective on this, what we see is that the amount of data we produce every day and the amount of data we collect actually becomes an increasingly powerful tool to assess what we're doing, actually, if what we're doing is actually delivering the results we expect it to do. So we can use it as a very good feedback loop for development decisions. That's why I personally think that all that big data should actually be in the public domain, because each one of us is actually contributing to that data. Without us having our mobile phones with us, Google wouldn't have movement data they can use for their transport maps. And I think it should almost become a public good. Of course, anonymized to a high degree, but it certainly would help solving a lot of questions in the urban development. And as we see, we can be much more precise in how we plan things nowadays with this big data.
Do you feel you have enough analytical tools to process this data, to analyze? When did the whole big data movement start? We're not even probably 10 years down the line. So this is very early days, and these tools need to develop further, and they need to be refined. But I think we have made a good start, and the dynamics you see is enormous. And I think the dynamics would be even bigger if all that data would be available in the public domain. At the moment, there is certain data which is not, and that I think rather hinders the innovation than actually propels the innovation. So I think we're at the start, but I think it's moving quite quickly. Thank you. Спасибо большое. Ну что же, мы...
Okay, so thank you so much. Let me say a couple of words to conclude our discussion. Oh, sorry. With your permission, to extend on the previous question, there was a question if it's a matter of trust or lack of trust to electronic forms. I think that if we would compare ourselves with a different culture, it would be not correct. Well, take a look at their smartphones. They are excellent. They trust in them. This is part of their lives. They are moving on. And I believe that we will still keep living with the principle, without a paper you are nobody. We're trying to sort this question out, but if we take a look at industry like aviation with no paper, you don't have tickets, at least a ticket, but out of 3 passengers, you will need one who will need to print out e-ticket. And I worked a lot with passengers, and my attempt to explain them that you have it in your email or somewhere else, and my attempt to explain them would be, I'm afraid I will forget it. I need that for accountants in our office. So if we would investigate the business process itself and try to define what the person would need the document for and how he's likely to use, and if we would make all those offices and authorities work in a single way, then we will resolve the matter of trust, because the person would not feel this is something necessary. So I hope that one day we will have one single document to identify.
Огромное спасибо.
Thank you very much, and I would like to give a daily life example. So we've seen people who are going to this multi-purpose services center. They want to get some certificates. We started to analyze where do they bring these certificates. They bring these certificates to schools, for instance. Sometimes they get certificates at school and bring the same certificates back to the social security services. And right now we are making a very simple interface for schools, and they will have a direct interface with the social security authority, and like that we will avoid of around 200,000 trips which people make everywhere between these two governmental entities. And this is a right direction which will enable us to go paperless one day. Thank you very much. This is a very important subject. The review of business processes, the review of such requirements from tax authorities, and the reform of tax authorities is the underpinning of all these processes. So let's look what we have finally. The discussion was very interesting, and we have several topics to ponder over. First topic, coordination. And at CTFM on radio, we had a program, and during this program, listeners evaluated the level of e-services. And mostly the feedback was negative. But they were talking about different authorities, and there are authorities who are doing a great job, there are authorities which are doing a bad job, so they were mixing up federal authorities, local authorities, so it is not important for our citizens who is the issuer of a service, who is the provider. They don't care. So I think that the coordination between different authorities and between different levels of power is our task number one. The second task is to understand where is the right balance between digital services and paper-based services. And all this requires a tremendous offline effort, especially a tremendous effort by the governmental authorities. And in this or that way, we will have to identify this balance. And the last topic, the frontline topic, a very relevant one. So we have a huge pool of data which is processed by digital services every minute, every day. And this big data gives us a great potential to develop the development of cities. And this is priceless information, and this information can have a positive impact on the city's development and to ensure its well-being. Thank you very much for this discussion. So I invite you to take a tour around this exhibition. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation. Thank you very much.